Welcome to today's lesson. We shall proceed from where we left last time on the issue of policies, and these are among the last topics. And today I begin with formulating of a policy, and this formulation of a policy starts with the philosophy. After philosophy, it goes down to external. Number 3 is internal, and all of them are factors. Then number 4, it is evaluation. From coming up with alternatives. Then number 5, we make a choice of the alternatives, and then number 6, we implement. And then number 7, we review. So meaning, when you are formulating a policy, at this point you will be able to acknowledge the philosophy of the organization and the philosophy of the HR, because there should be that complement between the HR philosophy and the organization's philosophy, because the HR is domiciled in the organization, and therefore it must derive its power from the organization's philosophy, because if it does anything that is going to be outside the expectations or the philosophy of the organization, then it means it might render it very difficult for the performance of the expected activities, and therefore finding itself on a very, very difficult task. So, and a philosophy is like a cardinal value you use in your day-to-day activities, the beliefs and assumptions that we have in the organization in terms of management and execution of our day-to-day activities. Then you go to the external factors. Now, these are elements which reside outside the organization, but they have a direct impact on the functions of the organization every now and then. We have very little control on them, but they influence our day-to-day functions. So things like the government policy and other major players, which are maybe regulatory bodies, we need to be very keen on them, so that anything we are formulating, it is going to be also towards their own liking, because if we don't, then they might render what we are doing null and void. Under internal factors, this is what exists within the organization, and therefore we are to the fact that there are some policies that we can make, but if we ignore what influence that we are maybe experiencing within the organization, some of them will not be able to meet the threshold that is required, and you might find that you are losing what was initially expected to be done in a very cordial and easy manner, and therefore failing also to find a proper leeway to something that is quite very simple and very easy to initiate. So some of those initiatives or maybe items try to remind you on what you are supposed to obey and purely put across. Then here we develop the alternatives, and they are a variety of those alternatives, because you cannot just base your arguments on one avenue or maybe on one thing. So we shall be able to come up with those alternatives through a critical analysis and paraphrase them in the order of importance, and be able to see, do they stand the test of time. Then from these alternatives, you make the best choice, which you are sure carries the best interests of both the organization and the other players. When you make the choice, you implement it, meaning put it into action or put it into practice, and be able to ensure that it is running what the organization expected to run forth. And lastly, you do a review. A review is just more like an audit of the policy, and be able to see how has it been able to perform, or maybe able to undertake the various tasks that are expected across. If it is absurd, it can be withdrawn. If it is requiring some amendments, then that can also be initiated over the same and give forth what is required. So we shall look now at the benefits that are expected forth, because when we have HR policies, then what we gain in terms of benefits. Point number one, it is about facilitating decision making, because a decision maker should have a basis of making decisions. And the basis we can use to make decisions, they are the existing policies. So they give us the impetus of how to make those policies and the manner in which they are going to be given forth. Promptness of action is what we've seen under the aspect of making decisions very fast, because we are not going to be dilly-dallying in terms of making decisions, but we are going to be able to make decisions at the right time. Because if we escalate dealing with an existing issue because a policy hasn't been formulated, then it means we are going to lose the point of engagement. Number three, about consistency. It means there is that level of uniformity, because your actions are not going to be changing every now and then because you are using your own original thinking. Those actions must be manifested to some other expectations and ideally what you want maybe to put into perspective. Then we have continuity and stability. Policies form the basis of actions in an organization, and therefore that is where we are going to look at the succession or maybe the organization's continuity, because some of them collapse because they have poor policies in place and therefore they are not able maybe to meet the expectations that are there within the society or maybe their areas of engagement. Stability, it is prompting harmony within the organization, because a policy, it is where we derive our actions, and therefore if a policy is there to guide our actions, then automatically it allows us to be able to perform our day-to-day activities with minimal problems. Under better control, it means your supervision activity or work will be very simple because you have a basis of undertaking that supervision, and therefore everybody who is subsequent and derives or maybe is enshrined over the same is going to utilize such activities. Then the issue of biasness will be eliminated, because you're not going to base your arguments or actions on anything else but the existing rules and regulations. So people are going to be served as per the existing rules. Then the welfare of the people will be taken care of, because 90% of the policies will be talking about our relationship as employees in the organization, and therefore allowing us to make sure that we are able to take care of each other person's opportunity. And lastly, confidence, because employees will not manifest some anxiety in terms of their actions or maybe their day-to-day activities, because they know there's somewhere they are deriving their power or they are deriving their actions, and therefore if there is any form of reprimand, then they will quote or they will lay their basis on that policy. But the same policies have some bit of limitations. One of them is it is more of like a routine work, and therefore we find ourselves that our rigidity is going to be opined over the same, because nobody wants to go away from the policy, and therefore we shall stick to it because it is our cardinal guidance, and therefore it sometimes promotes that spirit of rigidity and how it is going to become for. So people sometimes cannot have room to initiate anything they feel can assist them to do their work swiftly. Number two, policies cannot be a solution to all our problems, because problems in an organization emerge from different quarters, different sectors, and different areas. And therefore, if you are going to be making policies to solve each and every problem, then it will be a very tedious exercise, because Some of the things that emanate require original thinking, common sense, and also amendments to the existing issue. So you find that some problems cannot be sorted out by the existing policies. Number 3, they substitute your own judgment. So meaning you are judging something basing on something else and not your own intelligence or your own experience or thinking. So that one also can be a major impediment to whatever you want to do as a person, because they delimit your thinking to a certain area, and therefore you make your decisions only in that sector or in that area. And then lastly, they are not long lasting, because if the dynamisms are there in the working environment, the similarity or the same applies to the policies. They cannot also be they cannot stay for a long time, because such dynamics also tilt the application of such policies, and therefore we lose on what is expected. Fourth, to sum up, is you can only make a HR policy to be effective if that HR policy, it is formulated in accordance to the good standards that are required. Because if the standards you are using to come up with a policy, they are lame and they are suspect in nature, then your policy will die a natural death. It will not be able to meet the expected demands that are being put in place. Meaning, review of your policies should always be your endeavor every now and then, so that you are in a good position to evaluate your activities and other initiatives very swiftly. And also set standards that you are going to use in accruing or understanding those policies, and making sure that they still meet the expectations that are there and also what everybody feels to undertake. So that clears the entire topic of policies, and God willing, we shall be able to start the new topic of records, that is in our next lesson. Thank you.